Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Tuesday, October 15, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Alright, folks, well, I have a very interesting video for you here, and it has to do with connections that I made between my research and this fellow, Viktor Schauberger. Now, some of you may be familiar with his name. Maybe if you're a student of history or science or perhaps UFOs, ufology, somewhere in those lines, you might have heard his name. But I would imagine a lot of people haven't heard his name, which is kind of strange considering the lengths that the U.S. and Russia and the Nazis went to acquire his technology. And a lot of things are not said about the fellow if you go to any sort of mainstream source or anything. It's funny, nobody's done any documentaries on him, not at least on the mainstream cable channels or anything like that. So just leaves you wondering why. Okay, so I'm going to go over a little bit who this Viktor Schauberger guy was, but a documentary was produced on him in Germany. We're going to take a little bit of a look at that if I can here. And we'll just take a little bit of a look at this, and I'll tell you what I mean about what the relationship is between this Viktor Schauberger fellow, Native Americans, UFOs, and my own research as soon as we get to it. So let's take a little bit of a look at this thing here, and you can hear about Viktor Schauberger. This is his grandson.
Many people have tried to build similar structures, but my grandfather's logging flumes were the only ones that really worked. Viktor Schauberger received many patents for aspects of his logging flumes, as well as for natural watercourse regulation devices, and for the guide vanes that divert the water into the middle of the river, preventing damage to the banks. In the Pythagoras-Kepler school in Bad Ischl, Viktor's grandson Jörg and his wife Ingrid have held numerous courses and workshops on the topic,
So, you see this in their little school there where they give seminars and stuff. You see this tetrahedron type shape here, okay, sacred geometry or whatever. Just pay attention to that. We're going to cover something about that in a little while. It's just very interesting to me that this is sitting on the table there.
And movement of water. In his own way, Viktor Schauberger analyzed the meandering movement of a natural watercourse and described it in detailed drawings. His conclusions are valid for all rivers. However, Viktor's unorthodox proposals for regulation of the Rhine and Danube were ignored by the experts.
Okay, so just to stop it here for a second, you can see these pieces of constructions here on the outer banks, all right? That was to create the vortex to keep the flow in the middle of the river, as Schauberger was proposing. And I've known about this fellow for some time now, and he's just an incredible intuitive savant when it comes to nature and the workings of nature. His level of intelligence is on par with, let's say, Nikola Tesla. Okay, but as you noticed on the outer banks of the river here, he has these constructions put there. Well, I talk about that when I did my research at Mallory up in upstate Connecticut. And here I'm talking about it in this video. Just listen to what I say. Okay? And here is the part of the Sawmill Brook that's sort of like an S-curve through here. And I have some other videos dealing with that I shot yesterday. I'm still yet to post them, but I'm gonna. But just to comment on this section over here where you see this S-curve going through here, look how beautiful that is. It's just amazing. And after talking with Jimmy about it, Jimmy out of Paleo Mountain, Jimmy has a background in art and art history and, symbology and other things like that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this section of the brook was intentionally made because it's easy to see. It looks to me like, they were manipulating the brook to do certain things by the placement of the stones on the banks over there and over here. So, they were managing the meandering of the brook. So why not just have it go straight? That would be better than making these S curves or whatever it is. Although if you study water and its movement, S's make the water move faster. Okay, so I got that from Schauberger. Okay, and if you notice, there's stone constructions on the outer banks, and going into this outer bank over here across on opposite sides, and right on the left-hand side, going right into this bend over here where it just bends around these stone placements over here, and then it goes sort of straight. But only this S over here, and you can see the stones there, and on this side, a lot of them had already washed into the brook. But right on the left there would be this thing, okay? This very, very interesting triangular construction here. It's almost like a pyramidal construction, okay, at the convergence of these two walls here. And the stones in this wall and these lentils, these flat lentils down here are absolutely huge, okay? So it's created with these giant stones, and it just so happens in symbology, in native folklore, etc., and around the world too, this triangular shape is also the symbol for the head of a snake or a serpent, right at the end of this S curve here, okay? So I noticed that when I was saying, you can't see this kind of stuff. Guys, this is the only channel and the only place you're going to see this stuff. Out of the whole Northeast, I've never seen anything like this, okay? And Mallory was just a Disneyland, for lack of a better word, of stone constructions, Aboriginal and ancient stone constructions that are just amazing. Okay, if you haven't seen that video series on my channel, please do take a look at it, because you're going to see things in there that you never saw before, okay? The northeast part of North America is the largest area, biggest area of archaic stone constructions in the world. I don't care what Michael Tellinger says, and I went on Coast to Coast, and I ambushed him on there because I'm getting sick of hearing him say it, okay? South Africa is a little puny little thing compared to what's going on here in the northeastern part of North America, from Canada all the way down to Pennsylvania, and all the states involved and all the square miles involved with that. 500,000 miles of archaic stone constructions, and 240 officially, but Barbara DeLong says it's more like 500,000. And that doesn't count all the rest of the stone constructions that aren't walls. Okay, so, they took that video down. They made me take it off my channel, too. And they had to have Michael Tellinger come back on because I ambushed him. And next time I called in George Norrie, I said, who I was, Dave from Long Island. He said, oh, I know who you are. Because he was mad about it. I ambushed him. He didn't take the one down from L.A. Marzulli, though. I ambushed him, too. They didn't take that one down. But Coast took a number of my videos down, especially the ones where I ambushed people. I did it to Ken Fader. They didn't take Ken Fader's, that jerk, who said, yeah, there's good documentations on the stone walls. There's zero documentation on the stone walls, you moron. I've done all the friggin' research, and what Robert Thorson claims in his book about the first stone wall built in 1607 at the Popham Colony, well, the Popham Colony was a baloney story. It was a bullshit story. It didn't exist. There's no such thing as a Popham Colony. It was a money scam by people in England, okay? I got to the bottom of that. You're not going to hear these things on any other channels, okay? So let me try to get through this quickly, okay? So here's an example, a hands-on example of mine, okay, of the Native American peoples engineering a book, creating these, outer banks, stone constructions on the outer banks here. And in other videos, such as this one on ancient waterway management, okay, I'm not going to play it, but I talk about the Serpent Mound, okay, and how it relates to my research at Mallory, with the section of brook that I just showed you there, that the Serpent Mound follows the bends of a creek that's below it. okay? And the countless research that I've done about the Native Americans and their water management things from right here on Long Island with King Mangatuxi, the gigantic guy who supposedly doesn't exist. That I lost a friend of mine on Facebook because I dared mention that there's giants. So they didn't want to talk to me anymore after that. So the whole thing, see, this brainwashing going on in mainstream and even brainwashing going on in alternative. People are brainwashed, whether it's UFOs, giants, or whatever it is. There's brainwashing going on everywhere, folks. And if you heard it on the History Channel, whatever it is, on UFOs, giants, whatever it is, you can be sure that it's a bullshit story. With the government standing right over their shoulder saying, oh, that's good. Yeah, put that in there, but you'll never see anything about Viktor Schauberger in there. Okay, so let's read about this Viktor Schauberger guy. Okay, Wikipedia has this crummy little article in it. And again, considering how much the U.S., the Russians, and the Nazis wanted to get a hold of this guy's technology and what they did to him and all this kind of stuff, it's a wonder to me why any mainstream channel has not produced a documentary on this fellow. Okay, so that one was out of Germany, I believe. So, okay, let me read this to you. I try to get this to you quickly. It's very hard to do, to connect all these ideas together in a short video like this, but I'm doing my best. Viktor Schauberger was an Austrian forest caretaker, naturalist, parascientist. Okay, you see that word there, parascientist. What's a parascientist? Philosopher, inventor, and biomimicry experimenter. Schauberger developed his own ideas based on what he observed in nature. In Implosion magazine, a magazine released by Schauberger's family, he said that aeronautical and marine engineers had incorrectly designed the propeller. He stated, as best demonstrated by nature in the case of an airfoil maple seed, today's propeller is a pressure screw and therefore a braking screw. And the aerofoil maple seed, whose purpose is to allow this heavy maple seed to fall parachute-like slowly towards the ground and to be carried away sideways by the wind in the process. No bird has such a whirling thing on its head, nor a fish on its tail. Only man made use of this natural brake screw for forward propulsion. As the propeller rotates, so does the resistance rise by the square of the rotational velocity. This is also a sign that this supposed propulsive device is unnaturally constructed and therefore out of place. Okay, very interesting that he said that. And what's a parascientist? What's parascience? Okay, well, parascientists is what the Native Americans were. Okay, so I went over that in another video of mine, the Hohokam, where C.W. Saram and the first Americans said, how did these people create these canal systems without a surveyor's transit, a surveyor's scope? If we were to do the same project today, we would need a team of surveyors out there, and it would be months or a year before they came up with any sort of engineering diagrams for any of these things, because of what we have to go through today. However, Native Americans, including the Hohokam, who had weird phenotypes and strange skulls, were able to build these things, okay? And all across the Americas, King Mangatuxi here, at the canoe place, building canals, and, how did these ancient peoples and archaic peoples do all this stuff without use of a surveyor's scope? That was C.W. Saram's question. He was a brilliant man in his own right. Parascience. Parascience is the study of subjects that are outside the scope of, you see that there? Shoot. Get back to it. Outside the scope of, or phenomena that is not recognized to exist by the natural and social sciences because their occurrence is not established and cannot be explained by accepted scientific theory, or because it cannot be tested by conventional scientific methods. That's right. It's outside the scope of it. They have no instrumentation to measure some things. And some of these things that Schauberger was talking about, they have no instrumentation to measure it, okay? But the guy was clearly a genius, came up with all these amazing inventions. According to a more specific definition of parascience, the term covers, quote, non-scientific practices that are not pseudoscientific, unquote. For example, history, philosophy, art, and religion. Isn't that interesting that all those things are parasciences? Philosopher of science Mario Bong defined parascience as a discipline claiming not to be scientific, but at the same time claiming to be better suited than science to provide some type of knowledge. Parascience is not pseudoscience. Pseudoscience claims to be scientific, but isn't. Parascience does not claim to be scientific. Okay, so all these Native Americans from North, Central, and South America that did work on waterways, canals, etc., somehow had this same sort of knowledge, and even the people at Mallory, okay, with the design of the snake in the brook over there, with the snake head, the pyramid thing at the top of it. All right, so somehow they got that knowledge. Perhaps it was passed down to them from some more ancient archaic peoples. Perhaps these people with oddly shaped heads going even further back in time. And of course, we know the histories of the Americas goes way, way back in time, despite what everybody says about Sumeria and Göbekli Tepe and all this kind of stuff. There's good evidence that shows that more sophisticated societies were here in the Americas long before that, okay? So that's what current mainstream archaeology shows. Whether their fellow archaeologists and anthropologists agree with them, it's a different thing, but, you know, they're brainwashed people, too. They watch the History Channel and the Science Channel and Learning Channel where they get their, you know, mouthful and their head full of brainwashing, okay? So here's something that they left out of that Wikipedia article. We're going to just cover it as fast as I can here. Viktor Schauberger, an Austrian forester who observed the effects of nature, especially water, privately met Adolf Hitler in 1934 to discuss the fundamental principles of agriculture, forestry, and water engineering. While Hitler was impressed by Schauberger's radical ideas for utilizing water power in new and dynamic ways, he was also displeased that Schauberger was not willing to participate in work for the Third Reich. Subsequently, and unfortunately for Schauberger, this meant that once Austria was annexed in 1938 and war broke out in 1939, the SS would come searching for him and his ideas based on his patents for an air turbine, quote-unquote, procedure for lifting liquids and gases, unquote, from 1935, and the quote-unquote warm coal machines built for Siemens in 1937, which was, however, destroyed in an unauthorized test. Okay, so they destroyed this warm coal machine, whatever the heck that was, because they couldn't wait for Schauberger, and Schauberger probably left some stuff out so nobody else could do it, knowing a person with that level of intellect. In 1940, Schauberger began construction of the Repulsine discoid motor in Vienna with help from the Kirtle Company. He patented his idea on March 4th, 1940 in Austria under patent 146141, but very soon afterwards he was reported by the Viennese Association of Engineers to the SS, who placed Schauberger in a mental hospital in Mauer-Olling. So pay attention to that. They placed him in a mental hospital. Okay, that's what they do to you when, you know, they want to get something out of you. Schauberger was then forced to work with Messerschmitt on liquid vortex cooling systems in Heinkel concerning application of water towards aircraft engines. At this point, Heinkel received reports on the early Repulsion A, and here's a Heinkel aircraft design for the Repulsion motor that would pull the aircraft through the air, not push it. Flying cigar design. See that right there, flying cigar design, okay? A little UFO hinting there. At Mauthausen, under orders from Heinrich Himmler himself, Schauberger was to carry out research and development of the Third Reich war effort. He was given approximately 20 to 30 prisoner engineers to proceed with his research and was termed, quote-unquote, higher atomic energies. For this, Schauberger was given special dispensations from the SS for both himself and fellow engineers. The construction and perfection of a Repulsion A model discoid motor continued until one of the early test models was ready for a laboratory test that ended in disaster. The model was 2.4 meters in diameter with a small high-speed electric motor. Upon initial startup, the Repulsion A was set in motion violently and rose vertically, quickly hitting the ceiling of the laboratory, shattering to pieces. The SS were not pleased and even threatened Schauberger's life, suspecting deliberate sabotage. Replacement models were built, but by 1943, a more improved design, the Repulsion B model, was constructed with the SS objective of developing this motor for an odd SS bio-submarine, which Schauberger named the Forel trout, due to its configuration of a fish with a gaping mouth. Okay, so there's the submarine that he designed, and you see the vortex going in, the vortex around the ship there. Okay, very, very interesting design there. Okay. So it talks about how the repulsion motors work. We're not going over that, but I want to talk a little bit about the UFO aspect of it to it. And Schauberger, meanwhile, had his remaining discoid motors confiscated by the Russians and Americans at the end of the war, while Avro Canada approached Schauberger for disc development along with a team led by Dr. Richard Might. Okay, this guy, Richard Might, was the Operation Paperclip guy. Schauberger had already worked for him through the SS. Okay, he refused and instead devoted his remaining life to peaceful uses of his vortex technology by working on various civilian projects, which included generators in both water and air purification systems. In the late 1950s, Schauberger visited the U.S. and was again pressured into working on military disc design. The pressure was even greater due to the fact that Schauberger's original repulsion motors had fallen into Russian hands, and the U.S. suspected Schauberger's technology would appear as nuclear-armed aircraft over U.S. soil. Schauberger refused to continue participation, but had his designs forcibly signed over to a powerful U.S. consortium. He returned to Austria and died there 5 months later, having robbed of everything. A tragic end of the life of the man, for the man everyone named the Water Wizard. Okay, so I could read on, but there's just not enough time to do it. So he was robbed by the U.S. too, okay? Our supposed non-fascist government and all this kind of stuff, which is a bunch of bullshit. Folks, I hate to tell you that. Everybody's like, yeah, USA, Yankees suck, Russia sucks, everybody sucks, well, USA is great. You know, one of these fucking idiots. Okay, examining the evidence. An American military plane saw a dark red UFO at 15,000 feet over UFO, and the pilot took this photo in 1966. No official explanation has been offered, okay? So, you see this thing here, okay? Well, you know on my channel, I talk about UFOs. What are UFOs? Well, in my mind, UFOs are creatures that live in space, okay? The vast ocean of space, okay? Just pay attention to that, okay? And that was me believing in that came from Trevor James Constable, okay? From his book, They Live in the Sky. And here you see a number of infrared photographs of what they call atmospheric organisms, okay? And what they call sky critters and sky beasts are actually hard shell craft, which are not really craft, they're just organisms, okay? And I went over this on my channel with sky beasts and atmospheric organisms, and in a following video with bioluminescence, bioelectric animals, and biomechanoids, okay? And Trevor James Constable got a lot of his ideas from Wilhelm Reich, okay, who is a genius in his own right. Okay, so let's hear what happened to this Wilhelm Reich with his orgone guys. You can read about him yourself, but here's what became of him, okay? He moved to the United States. He moved to New York in 1939 in part to escape the Nazis, and shortly after arriving coined the term orgone, from orgasm and organism, for a biological energy that he said he discovered, which he said others called God. In 1940, he started building orgone accumulators, devices that his patients sat inside to harness the reputed health benefits, leading to newspaper stories about sex boxes that cured cancer. Okay, so they sensationalized it any way they wanted and made fun of the guy. Following two critical articles about him in the New Republic and Harper's in 1947, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration obtained an injunction against the interstate shipment of orgone accumulators and associated literature, believing they were dealing with a, quote, fraud of the first magnitude, unquote. Charged with contempt in 1956 for having violated the injunction, Reich was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, and that summer over 600 of his publications were burned by order of the court. He died in prison of heart failure just over a year later, days before he was due to apply for parole. Okay, well, this orgone stuff comes under the auspices of parascience, folks, okay? And this guy went running from the Nazis to escape their fascism, only to have his books burned. Why did they burn them? Was it necessary to burn them? I'm sure they burned them right after they copied all of them. Okay, because I doubt highly they just burnt it or whatever. But this is the U.S. government in 1956 burning books. Okay, that's not fascist, right? Okay, and more or less killed this guy off. Okay, similar to that what was done to this guy. Okay. Does it sound any different to you? The type of strong arm tactics that were used on these people? Different from the Nazis? Was it so different? Okay? And this guy, Trevor James Constable, was an acolyte of his, and I go over it on my channel, okay? You see that right there? That's an animal. Okay? Right? Like we saw in the Viktor Schauberger video, right? Sitting on the table there. Well, this is an animal, okay, that lives in the ocean. All right? And all of these animals, this is the biomechanoid section of my video here, where I go through all these biomechanoid animals that live in the oceans on this planet. Well, space is a vast ocean. And if you remember, John Glenn said he saw fireflies. Okay, but they explained that later on. It was just, the ice crystals on the spacecraft following it and all that kind of stuff. Well, I imagine if a rocket came up from the Earth for the first time, all the things flying around in space would be curious about it because they're animals, you see. And every week, I hear Peter Davenport do a report on Coast to Coast, and I'm screaming at the radio every time that he gives a report, because every single freaking report he gives, I'm saying it's an animal. It's acting like an animal, okay? These things defecate like animals. Things coming from these things, reported in UFO reports, dropping slag coming from. These things may be silicon-based life forms, okay, that live in space, okay? If they're telling you on the History Channel about ancient aliens and UFO files, you could bet your teeth on it's bullshit, okay? That's all bullshit, folks. Bugcat 7, I'm trying to give you the straight dope on it, okay? These things are things that live in space, and Viktor Schauberger, okay, was imitating nature, okay, biomimicry, okay, with his designs, okay. Perhaps these things that live in space have a similar kind of drive in them that they can use either in the atmosphere or in space. We talked about the idea of biomechanoids living in space, and it's covered in every science fiction book and program you ever saw, okay? Think of the Firefly. I said this in my video. Think of the Firefly, okay? You got a car, right? It goes, top maximum speed, 120 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, okay? Have you tried to do a right-hand turn, a 90-degree right-hand turn going full speed in your car? What would happen if you do that? Well, I got news for you. The dragonfly and darning needle can change direction, include going backwards, okay, at full speed, okay, 30 miles an hour for, I think, dragonfly. If that dragonfly was the size of a car, it would be more like 300 miles an hour, okay? These things can change direction in an instant, okay? These animals. And every report I hear from Peter Davenport, last week was one that was zigzagging it, zig, stop, zag, stop, zig, stop, and then it ended up by some people's back porch where it just sat there looking at him, okay? The week before he was talking about how these orange ones were shooting red ones with some sort of beam or something. It was probably a neural neutralizer. It's not like a bullet or something like that that's going to go through them or whatever, but these things are electrically based organisms. That's how they're going to live in space and propel themselves through space, okay? A tiger has infrasound. That's how they immobilize their prey, okay? Certain animals can have infrasound, and the tiger's growl has been noted to, do this to their prey, okay? And what people think are these abduction cases, whatever,